Over the past 8 years, I have discovered that being a foster parent is not easy. For example, I have no problem telling my adult daughter that, in my opinion, she made a mistake. As her father, I have the right to do so, and it is my duty, but I hesitate to do the same with my adopted children. As for my stepson and stepdaughter, I am very careful when correcting them when they do something that I find inappropriate. I walk a very fine line, and sometimes it is uncomfortable. So, when I realized that my stepson's wife might be betraying her husband, I found myself in a very difficult position. My name is Patrick, but they call me Pat Hansen. Jenny and I have been married for 8 years. This is the second marriage for both of us. However, our relationship goes back more than 30 years. We dated for a few months in high school before our paths diverged. We reunited 10 years ago. I was married for 18 years when my wife and I separated. It happened because of the fence around our pool. Well, to be honest, the dispute over the fence was just the last straw in a huge pile of problems. Over time, our relationship changed, and ours became me and mine, you and yours for both of us. So we decided to end it all. Our daughter handled the divorce as best as she could and has come to accept that she now has 2 homes. She loves her stepfather very much and treats him with respect and affection. The same goes for my wife. Her stepmother. Jenny's son and daughter feel the same way about me, at least that's what I believe. When my first wife and I separated and the divorce was still a few weeks away, I was searching for something on the internet, and something completely unrelated to my initial search came up, which reminded me of Jenny, whom I had known for so long. So I typed her name. I didn't know her married name or even if she was married. So I typed her maiden name. Her name appeared in her husband's obituary. It even included a phone number, which I found unusual. So I called her, and the rest, as they say, is history. Now I am the director of security at a large transportation company. We moved to New Orleans 5 years ago to find work. My job is challenging, but fortunately, it allows me to be closer to home. Jenny spends her time serving on various charity boards throughout the state. We're not wealthy at all, but we can afford almost everything we want. Jenny's late husband's investments helped make this possible. My daughter is single and lives in Cincinnati, Ohio, where she and her mother own a relatively successful souvenir shop. Jenny's daughter lives in Estes Park, Colorado, with her husband, who works as a ranger, and their 2 children. Her son Tyson, known as Ty, has been living with his wife in Memphis for 5 years, where he works as a manager for a package delivery service. Ty's wife, Lauren, is a dental assistant and works for one of the city's most popular dentists. They have a 4-year-old daughter named Jenny, and I don't see our children as often as we would like, maybe once or twice a year for a few days. In recent years, we have seen Ty and Lauren much more often than the others. We're about 6 hours away from Memphis, and it seems that Ty has many 3-day weekends. So they come here every few months, but in the past year or so, only Ty has made this trip. Lauren always seemed too busy. It was the same last summer. Jenny and I took all the kids on a cruise. Everyone came with us except Ty, who couldn't take time off from work. That was the excuse Ty gave. I'm starting to think he doesn't like us, Pat. It's not the point. I think he feels he needs to be closer to work in case of an emergency. When your job becomes more important than your family. Maybe it's time to find another job. 4 months ago, one of the transport associations of which my company is a member organized a seminar in Nashville. My boss decided it would be a good time for me to visit his daughter in Colorado, and I agreed. The seminar ended on Friday afternoon, and some of the participants were going to have dinner and socialize in the evening. We managed to book a table at a very good steak restaurant. Their dishes were perfect. My flight wasn't until noon the next day, so I wasn't in a hurry to leave the restaurant. Besides, the Hilton was just a couple of minutes away, so I decided to have another drink and call Jenny. My gin tonic had just arrived, and I was about to dial Jenny's number from my speed dial when I noticed the couple being seated at a table not far from mine. I watched as the waiter pulled out a chair for the lady and she sat down. Then I saw the gentleman accompanying her pull out her chair and take her hands. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it must have been amusing because she was laughing at almost everything he said. I took a few sips of my drink, but I couldn't concentrate on it. The staff kept checking on me constantly, implying that they could use my table. The couple was in the middle of their dinner when I decided to leave. I paid the bill, exited, and asked the doorman to call me a taxi. I'd like to be able to see everyone leaving the restaurant. I want to be able to follow them in whatever direction they go, I told the doorman. Can you do that? Of course, I can, but I have to keep the meter running while we wait, he replied. No problem, I replied. Then it's fine. There was an alley across the street, and he parked there, and we began to observe. It was about 9:30, and I pulled out my phone. It was 8:30 in Colorado, still early enough to call Jenny. Hello, honey, how's it going in Nashville? Not bad. I'm glad the seminar is over. I was thinking of going to Memphis tomorrow and having dinner with the kids and then coming back home on Sunday. What do you think of that? I'm fine with whatever you want to do, but no. They decided to come here for the weekend because Lauren and the people she works with are helping with the relocation of their offices, Jenny explained. We talked for another 15 minutes and hung up. We sat there and waited. The driver was playing a game on his phone when the couple left. It's them, I told the driver and pointed with my finger. They stood at the entrance for less than a minute, and a black limousine pulled up next to them. They got inside. We followed them, and I noted down the license plate number. They didn't go very far. In fact, they went to my hotel. They got out of the car and went inside. I paid the driver and followed. I was in the lobby just in time to see them enter the elevator, and it stopped on the same floor as my room. I returned to the doorman. Who were they? That couple in the limousine? Anyone famous? Not that I know of, the doorman replied. I pulled out my wallet and handed him a $100 bill. Could you find out? I could, but it's very little, he said, pointing at the bill. I got another one, waited, then got another. I had started putting everything back in my wallet when he took the money. I'll be right back. Shvetsar was gone for about 5 minutes and handed me a piece of paper. I entered the elevator before looking at the information. Mr. and Mrs. Dominique Lefo, room 912. I got off the elevator. Room 9912 was to the left. I turned right to 936, which was my number. I stood by the window, looking out and wondering what Lauren would be doing right now in room 912. I wasn't sure when I first saw them. I went to the minibar, prepared myself a gin tonic, and opened my phone to search for private detectives in Nashville. There were many of them. I searched until I saw an ad marked 24-hour call, so I did. Less than an hour later, I opened the door to a middle-aged couple who introduced themselves as detectives, and I invited them in. They declined my offer of a drink and got straight to the point. I told them I wanted to know everything they could find about Dominique Lefo. I provided them with the room number and the limousine's license plate. Then we talked about money. When would you like us to start? It's not too early now. I handed them a credit card. They wrote down the information they needed and left. I had planned to go back home tomorrow, but I decided to stay until Sunday. I lay down and tried to sleep. I spent most of the next morning sitting in the lobby, trying not to attract attention. While I was there, I changed my flight to Sunday afternoon. Just before noon, they came out of the elevator, exited, and got into a limousine. I walked down the street, had lunch, and returned to sit in the lobby. When they returned 5 hours later and took the elevator, I was there for the rest of the day, but I never saw them again. The following morning, one of the detectives called me as I was on my way to the airport. He wanted to give me an update. We met at the airport, and he handed me a standard envelope. There's information on Mr. Lefo. There are also photos and videos. The photos are quite dull, but the videos are not. The same doorman you paid to find out the Fazo's name helped us get into their room yesterday while they were out so we could install our equipment. We thought that if he accepted your bribe, he might accept ours, and he did. He was able to give us a room next to the Fazo's so we could monitor and record what was happening. The doorman is quite careless, and he suddenly wanted a copy of the video for his own visual pleasure. We've been in this business for a long time. And this is the first time we've been able to enter a Hilton room. So we really thought we were lucky. A limousine is just a regular rental car, nothing more than an expensive taxi. We have contacts all over the city who help us gather information. Fortunately, the limousine driver is one of those contacts. So most of the photos were taken by him yesterday while they were in his car. The information on the Fazo is far from complete. He's from Memphis and comes here every couple of months and always brings a girl with him. The girl who was with him this weekend has been here a couple of times before. We'll get information about her and provide it to you. Don't worry about her, though I'd like you to keep a close eye on him. Stick with him the next time he comes to town and let me know. We talked for a few more minutes before I had to go through security. I was a little worried that I might be selected for a secondary inspection and they would find the video with me. During the flight, I made sure no one looked over my shoulder. I got home at 6 o'clock. 1 minute later, I opened the envelope. I learned that there is a network of private detectives who provide each other with information. When my detectives talked to their contact, the limousine driver, they found out that Leifo was from Memphis. So they called their other contact, who was happy to tell them the whole story about him. Dominique Leifo was a dentist, married, and had 4 children. He was known for being a womanizer, but he was very selective. He and 4 other men in Memphis formed a club, a men's club that sleeps with married women. The women had to be married so that they had something to lose if they were caught, just like the men themselves. And the men always had to have more than one woman in the cage, not at the same time, but they always had to have more than one partner to turn to in case of need. Currently, Leifo had at least 2 women he was sleeping with. He obviously took advantage of any opportunity to cheat, but he preferred to go to Nashville to do it. I think Ty and Lauren are having issues. Why do you think that? Did he tell you anything last weekend? Not directly. He mentioned that he offered to help her and the office staff move, but she quickly responded that they wanted to do it themselves and that it would be a good opportunity for her to visit her sister. That's it, she just never wants to go anywhere with him. And she always says she wants to stay home. It doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with that. No, but do you remember 3 months ago when they came here? Lauren couldn't come because she was going to train a new employee, and her boss preferred the training to be done on weekends rather than when there were patients there. Well, the day before he came here, he serviced her and cleaned her car. The next day, when she got home, she noticed that one of her tires didn't have enough air. So, before going to work, he took it to inflate the tire. While inflating the tire, he noticed that the car was dirtier than it should have been after he had just washed it, and there were a couple of fast food bags in it. The only time Lauren eats those things is when they travel. So, he looked at the mileage and compared it to the bill from the time he serviced the car, and it had traveled over 500 miles. It's strange, especially considering he had to work all weekend. He asked her about it. Not because he was scared, he honestly doesn't know if he wants to know. Did he hesitate? That's not all. She called me on Monday morning. She and Ty arrived late on Sunday from our trip to Colorado, and Lauren was in the living room with a glass of wine. She told him she had just taken a bath because she was sweating after working all day helping to move the office. He took her dirty laundry from the basket in the bathroom and took it to his laundry room, along with the clothes that he and I took to Colorado. He was going to wash it, and while he was sorting it, he didn't find anything similar to what she used to wear when she needed to move office furniture. There were no jeans or t-shirts, just skirts, blouses, and dresses. Why didn't you tell me when he called? She asked me not to. You had already expressed your concern that she hadn't traveled with us before, and he didn't want to add fuel to the fire. Does she have any idea of what might be going on and what she could do? About that, well, she has to do something, but she still doesn't know what. I was about to tell her everything I knew, but I decided not to. After hearing Jenny, I decided to talk to Lauren in person and tell her what I knew, and then see how she reacted. Jenny and I talked for a few more minutes before going to bed. Jenny and Ty talked several times over the next 2 weeks. He decided to give Lauren some time and see what happened. Jenny told him not to pay too much attention to her. I talked to my boss and told him I would probably take a Friday off in the near future because of what Jenny told me. There was some progress in Ty and Lauren's relationship, everything seemed to be improving, perhaps I thought, but we'll see. It happened too quickly. The following week, Ty called Jenny and told her that Lauren had been selected to attend a conference in St. Louis next weekend. Her boss was paying for it, and she was happy. Ty was proud of her. I told my boss, and he allowed me to leave on Friday. I also told Jenny that I would be in Nashville over the weekend. She assumed it was for work, and I didn't dissuade her. Since Lauren is gone for the weekend, why don't you see if Ty and May can come? Well, that's a good idea. I'll call him now. I flew to Nashville on Friday morning and was met by my detectives. Ty and May flew to New Orleans at that time. Welcome back, Mr. Hansen. Everything is ready for you. They arrived at the hotel about 2 hours ago and have been there since. We finally made a deal with our favorite doorman, and our cameras in the room are working. You won't get copies of what we're recording on video, but you'll get more money, okay? Let's go to my room. Yes, sir. We spent the next few hours in my room. I started watching the live feed from the adjacent room. But I stopped after only a few minutes. Finally, late in the afternoon, Leifo and Lauren went out to dinner at a restaurant. As soon as they left the room, my detectives removed their equipment from Leifo's room, and I called Lauren. They had left the room 15 minutes ago. Hello, Pat. What's up? Hi, Lauren. I'm on the 8th floor of the Hilton Hotel, in room 837. You should come and talk to me. You shouldn't have trouble finding me. It's right next to room 835 where you were when you slept with Dominique Leifo. I'll be here in 10 minutes. I finished speaking. The video had been uploaded to my computer, and I was alone in the room. 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. I opened the door. They were standing there. I stepped aside as she entered the room, and her lover also started to enter. I pushed him back and closed the door. I turned to Lauren and just looked at her. And what will happen next? It depends on you. What do you mean? You can leave this room and Ty's life on your own, or I can show him a video of you with your boss. I went to my computer and pressed the button. Immediately, Lauren appeared on the screen, lying on her back with Leifo on top of her. That's it. Lauren froze for a moment. I didn't expect so much resistance from her, although she didn't think she was an easy person in life. She tried to stop the video, but I grabbed her hand. The recording continued. She tried to stop the playback again. This time, I let her do it. She sank into a chair and looked at me. I can't just leave. I need to talk to Ty. Why didn't you talk to him before deciding to cheat? Silence. Ty and May are at my house. You're going back to Memphis right now. Pack your things and get out. You're going to write a letter to Ty telling him you no longer want to be married. You won't speak to him or May, and you won't look back. You won't even have the chance to apologize. No, I can't leave May. I won't abandon her, maybe, Pat. Maybe Ty and I can work this out. I'll stop doing it. I'll be a good wife. I'll never cheat again. Could you do that, Lauren? Could you be a faithful wife again? The last time you were here, I saw you with Leifo. You humiliated him and laughed about it. Yes. You just leave. I won't tell Ty about you and Leifo, and he'll think you just didn't want to be married to him. But if you fight me on this, I'll make sure everyone you know sees these videos. Oh, my God. Did you see that? Yes. For the first time since she entered the room, she started crying. I'm sorry, Pat. I'm so sorry. We sat in silence. Her phone was in her bag, and we heard it ring. She looked at me, nodded. She opened her bag, took out her phone, and answered. Go home, Dominique. It's over. The phone went back into her bag. I will, Pat, but I need money. Ty will be home on Monday afternoon. This will give you time to withdraw half the money from your accounts. Your car's paid off, right? Yes, it's in your name, right? Yes, then you shouldn't have any problems. You'll have money, your personal belongings, and transportation. Ty will never know you betrayed him, and May will soon forget your existence. She got up and prepared to leave. Do you have the keys to your car in your bag? Yes. Go straight to your car and drive away. Don't go back to the boss or that room. Do you understand? She nodded and left the room. I packed at home when my phone rang. I saw who was calling. What do you want, Lauren? I won't do it, Pat. I won't leave without talking to Ty, and I can. I won't. I can't sound like this, but it's not what I meant. Let me think about it. I'll call you back. I drove to the park next to my house and was there for over an hour thinking. I called Lauren. Yes, Pat. You have 1 week. Jenny, Ty, and May were grilling hot dogs when I stepped out onto the porch. Jenny and May hugged and kissed me. Ty shook my hand and offered me a hot dog. I declined, telling him that I had recently learned to hate them and probably would never eat one again. We had a pleasant evening together. Jenny put May to bed and went to sleep. Ty and I had some port wine and chatted. After a couple of drinks, I heard, Pat, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Why did you divorce your first wife? The short answer is that we simply grew apart in the early years of our marriage. We did everything together, and we wanted the same things, and then our daughter, Barbara, was born. Over time, we just drifted apart. When we got married, it was all we'll do it or our vacations and both of us, but over the years, it turned into I want to do it or my vacations or I want to do it myself. One morning, we both woke up, shook hands, and parted ways as friends. We're still friends and talk a lot. In fact, we still care for each other to some extent. She and your mother get along well and are friends. Has any of you been unfaithful? I never have, and as far as I know, neither has she. What would you do if I did? That was a discovery. Lauren was going to be the toast, and I was supposed to be the toaster. I wanted to tell Ty that there would never be an excuse for cheating, but for some reason, I didn't say it. It wasn't Ty, and what was right for me might not necessarily be right for him. What if I forgave her this time? Would she cheat again? Once a cheater, always a cheater, that's what I've heard all the time. I have no idea. I think I would want to kill her, or him, or both, but I think I would want to know why. What have I done or not done to provoke this? There would be a lot of questions to answer. Would you forgive her? I can't answer that. I can only say that if she had cheated and if I had found out and if I had forgiven her, I would never, and I mean truly never, bring it up again because once you have forgiven someone, you will never be able to recall that particular incident or event. That doesn't mean you have to forget it. Remember what Santayana said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. We sat in silence and sipped the port wine for another half an hour. Finally, I said, it's been a long day, I'm going to bed. We wished each other good night. Ty and May went home on Monday morning. After they left, Jenny and I talked a bit about our concerns for their marriage, but in general, we just enjoyed being together. On Tuesday night, Ty called Jenny. It turned out that Lauren admitted to having an affair with her boss for the past year or so. She apologized to him and promised never to do it again. She suggested they go to a therapist and work on getting past her betrayal for the sake of their marriage and Ty. He told her to pack up and move out, and she did. He wasn't going to tolerate it. Jenny came over and clung to me, crying. He did the right thing, didn't he, Pat? I think so. No one should live with a deceiver. We sat, talked, held hands, and hugged. After about an hour, she went upstairs. As soon as she was out of earshot, I took out my phone. Hello, Mr. Lafo. You don't know me, but I have a couple of videos that I think you should see. Story 2. I am a 36-year-old male, and my wife, 31 years old, were married for 6 years before I learned something heartbreaking that destroyed our marriage. Before we got married, my wife and I were very good friends, and our relationship was strong because the organizations we worked for were on the same street, and we used to see each other all the time. But because I was always searching for greener pastures, I had to move to a different state where I still live. After I traveled to resume my new job, aside from my best friend and family, my wife was the only person who always called to check on me, and we talked on the phone the whole evening or chatted with each other throughout the day. It felt great to know someone out there cared about me, and in no time, I caught feelings for her. After months of being apart, I asked her out, and since she was also single, she said yes, and that's how our love story began. Even though our relationship was more of a long-distance one, I still felt loved and trusted her so much. On my end, I tried to communicate with her as much as possible, and we took turns visiting each other on weekends or whenever we were free. After 2 years of our long-distance relationship, we got married, and she was forced to relocate and live in my state. Luckily, she got a job in her field, and the pay was great. She was also very passionate about her career, and she quickly climbed the ladder in her organization. It had to do with the extra professional certification she got and her years of expertise. Marriage-wise, our relationship was great, and we were both happy, me especially. I loved her so much and did not imagine being with any other woman except her, and I believed we would grow old together. Initially, before we got married, we agreed we would not have kids yet because I didn't think I was ready to be a father. But after 1 year of marriage, I changed my mind. We talked about it again, and she was eager to stop taking her birth control pills, and fortunately for us, after a couple of months, she got pregnant and gave birth to a boy. The birth of our son came with an extra dose of happiness, and he even motivated me to work harder so I could take care of him. I even took an additional online job as a freelancer to earn some extra bucks. On the other hand, my wife did not need an additional job since taking care of our child was already working on its own, and I encouraged her to work very little and rest more, and I would take care of the rest. Eventually, after our son was almost a year old, she resumed work, and everything continued the way it was. The only difference in our lives was our son. Some months after my wife resumed work, I noticed she started dressing differently, which was unlike her before our son came. She never really cared about what she wore and would literally wear anything as long as the colors were right. But after she resumed work, everything changed. The thing is, I did not have a problem with her dressing differently and being conscious of what she wore. I was more concerned with how the dresses made her look. For someone who had recently given birth, her stomach was visible through her tight clothes, but she didn't mind. She would even go as far as wearing blouses that would expose her boobs and something a little bit under her hips. I complained about her new choice of clothes and told her I wasn't comfortable with them, but her response was always, "I'm not wearing them for you, I'm wearing them for me," and she would leave the house in anger. It got so bad that we started fighting about it until I finally found out she decided to change her wardrobe because of how she felt in her skin. Indeed, her body had changed, and she added a lot of pounds because of her pregnancy, and according to her, she wanted to look and feel younger, so she started dressing differently. Honestly, I felt terrible that I had been bugging her to stop dressing like a call girl, and I apologized and never mentioned it again. Meanwhile, our son was always with my wife, and we enrolled him at a daycare where my wife would drop him off in the morning before going to work, and I would pick him up by 3 p.m. every day. One day, I was supposed to go and pick him up as usual, but something came up at the office, and I couldn't leave. So, I tried calling my wife multiple times to inform her about the change of plans, but she wasn't responding. It was even past 3, and I didn't want her to think I had forgotten our son, whom I didn't. After waiting to see if she would return any of my calls, and she didn't, I called her organization to try and get in contact with her. But to my greatest surprise, I was told she no longer worked there and she was sacked a few months earlier for sleeping with an intern. At first, I looked at my phone screen to be sure I called the right organization, and it was. It didn't make sense because my wife left home by 7:30 every morning, and most times she would return late in the evening because she claimed she did overtime. I was so shocked that I lost focus for a couple of minutes before responding to the person on the phone. I ended up asking a colleague of mine to cover for me, and I went to take our son home. When I got home that day, I couldn't stop thinking about what I found out. To even show how good she was at pretending, she would come home and still pretend to work on her laptop so I wouldn't suspect anything. So, eventually, she returned home that evening and talked about her day at work, and all the things that happened there were all lies, and I kept my cool, played along, and pretended like I didn't know she had been fooling me. That same day, before I returned home, I stopped by a store and grabbed one of those mini trackers because I was curious to know where she went every morning and returned late in the evening. The following morning, when I put our son in the back seat of her car, I secretly placed the tracker and kissed her goodbye. Immediately she left the house, I started tracking her. As expected, she stopped first at our son's daycare, and from there, she went somewhere else, definitely not her workplace. She stayed there for several hours, went out, and returned to the same house. I tracked her for a whole week, and it was the same pattern until I decided to pay her a surprise visit one day. That day, she left the house as usual and even informed me she would be returning late because there was an important project her team was working on. I called in sick at work already because I knew I would be showing up at her lover's house. Meanwhile, I had stopped by the house before to know the exact apartment she was going to, and I knew what her lover looked like. He was younger and opened the door to welcome her whenever she went there. When I arrived, I knocked on the door pretending to be a pizza delivery guy. At first, I feared they wouldn't open the door because they didn't order pizza, but it was just dumb luck. Immediately, the young boy she was having an affair with opened the door. I pushed my way inside, and at the same time, my wife walked in on us, naked, and she froze. I was already prepared, so I was doing a Facebook Live video and recorded myself from the moment I left my car until I entered her lover's house. When she realized I was recording her, she tried to cover her face and run back inside, but she slipped and fell, resulting from her coming out of the bathroom. I know it is cruel, but I used the opportunity to record her well and say everything I wanted. It would be an understatement if I said I was only heartbroken. She literally destroyed everything we shared, planned, and even our son's life. That day, she didn't bother coming home because I warned her not to. I packed her things on her front porch, but she only came to take them a week later. I asked for revenge. I tagged most of her family members and friends on the live video I made, and she was so embarrassed. The comments were crazy too, and I'm sure she read all of them. Funny enough, she never tried to beg me or explain. She knew it was over between us, which was very smart of her. She was smart enough not to bring her infidelity into her house, or else she and her lover would probably be limping for life. Anyways, we divorced, and with the help of a good lawyer, I won custody of our son. She left town when she could no longer bear the embarrassment from our townspeople, neighbors, friends, church members, and others who recognized her from the viral live video. Right now, I am the only parent our son has and looks up to, and I'm confident he's my son because I did a paternity test. Asked for love. I will be taking a very long break for now, and I'd rather focus all my energy on raising my boy properly and giving him a good life. OP, your wife lied to you. She wasn't wearing all those exposing clothes for herself, she was wearing them for her lover. I'm sorry this happened to you, and from your story, it is obvious you are a good man and husband, but she was too short-sighted to see that and appreciate you. I'm glad you ended things with her, and she's out of your life for good. Please take care of yourself and your son. Meanwhile, that was a smart move in taking that paternity test. I wish more men with cheating spouses would do the same thing. Thank you for sharing your story with us, and I wish you the best going forward. Story 3. Here's my story. Andrea and I met at a mutual friend's wedding. We prepared to do the groomsmen and the bridesmaid couple dance and exchanged contact after that. As time passed, we became close friends, followed each other on social media, commented on each other's pictures, and started hanging out. I know you will all be mad that I asked Andrea to move in with me after 6 weeks of dating, but I did that because I was madly in love with her and wanted to wake up next to her every morning. She was a nice person and great company, at least for the time we were still together, and I enjoyed being around her. She was intelligent and funny, and I loved her sense of humor the most. I worked as a real estate consultant while she worked remotely. She was a web developer, and most of her jobs were done from home, except when she wanted a location change. We dated for 2 years, and at one time, I thought we would break up. Although this isn't the main part of what happened between us, it all adds up. During the first year of our relationship, there was a time she suddenly started acting cold toward me, and we no longer bonded like we used to. Before her change in attitude started, we used to cope together, talk about my day at work, and she would talk about how easy or challenging her work was that day too. But suddenly, I noticed she changed and would focus more on her phone and leave me to stay or watch television alone. Eventually, I found out she was flirting with someone online, and they were planning to meet the following week. I was so mad that she was flirting with some guy she met on Facebook, and they planned to hang out together the following week. Their chats were provocative, and the most annoying part was that she didn't tell him she was in a relationship or try to stop him from flirting with her. It was almost like she enjoyed it. When I confronted her about it, she apologized and said they were only playing around and it was nothing serious. She blocked him to prove to me that there was nothing serious between them and promised it would never happen again. Now that I think about it, that should have been a red flag for me. Although flirting with someone online is not enough reason to quit a relationship, I should have ended things with her because no one knows what level their flirting would have escalated to if I did not find out. Well, a year after that happened, we married. We never had issues of her flirting with anyone again, and I never found anything suspicious on her phone on the days I would unexpectedly ask to go through her phone. We were married for 2 years and didn't have any children because we didn't want any. Meanwhile, there was this very close friend of mine who was like a family friend, and his wife and Andrea were very good friends too. We had this small group of friends, 4 married couples and 2 single men. We didn't exactly form it, but we were always hanging out as a group and supported one another in good and bad times. Aside from family, they were my support system, and if one of us was going through a tough time, say, financial problems, we would all help out in any way we could, even if it meant contributing some money. When things were good, we would all dine and celebrate together. One day, I had recently sold a very expensive house to a client that had been giving me a tough time, and I had already told my friends that if the contract clicked, I would throw a small party to celebrate the milestone. And that's exactly what I did. The party was meant to be only for the members of our friendship group, but I added 3 more people, making us a total of 13 people, excluding their kids. During the party, I realized my phone battery was already low, so I went to our bedroom to get my charger or probably charge my phone there. But somehow, I got distracted by a short funny video one of our friends dropped on our group chat. Coincidentally, immediately after the video stopped playing, I heard my wife giggle and talk in a hushed tone with a man. They didn't know I was in our bedroom, and the door was partially open, so they stopped to kiss briefly before entering the kitchen. I was so shocked. I didn't actually see them kiss, but I knew they did because of the sound I heard. I was so heartbroken, and I could not believe Andrea was cheating on me after all the promises she made. It wasn't just her cheating that hurt, she cheated on me with my closest friend in her group. The funny thing was that his wife was in the living room with their 2 daughters, completely ignorant of what was happening. I was so boiled up and thought of confronting them, but I knew it would only make things worse, primarily because of how angry I was. So, I went to the kitchen, but before I entered, I announced my presence with a mild cough so they could have enough time to pretend nothing was going on between them. I talked to them briefly, grabbed a bottle of water, and left. But before I did, I turned on the voice recorder on my phone and left it in a very natural position so that they wouldn't suspect anything was fishy, even if they saw it. Shortly after they left the kitchen, I took it and listened to everything they said. They were planning to hang out that night, and my wife already devised the perfect plan to get rid of me. Hearing that even broke me more. So, I devised a plan. Before that time, I had learned a couple of audio editing hacks. So, I edited the audio and highlighted the part where they talked about their affair and how they would get rid of us in no time by divorcing me. Andrea's affair partner would divorce his wife later that night. I allowed her to proceed with her plan and pretended I didn't know anything. I had been heartbroken twice in the past, so my heart was already used to that kind of pain. The following day, I anonymously sent the audio to all our friends' email addresses, including her affair partner and his wife, and waited for everyone to react. First, they were shocked at what they had heard and could not believe it. I knew they had listened to the audio when one of them called and asked if I had gotten any audio from an anonymous email, and when I said no, he forwarded it to me. I pretended to be shocked and used the opportunity to confront Andrea. Honestly, I thought she would deny it and act innocent, but she started crying and begging me. She said she cheated on me because she wanted options and she felt she was stuck with me and kind of felt suffocated. Then she begged me to forgive her and not let her infidelity ruin the future we were building. The audacity concerning her talk of wanting to have options. I was shocked to hear that because Andrea was the same person who told me she was a one-man woman and she never cheated on her spouse and would never do that. So, it was all surprising to hear that she wanted options. I know I acted tough on the outside, but I was so hurt deep inside. I loved her so much and wanted what we had to work. Ultimately, I divorced her so she could go and be with her lover. I was thinking her lover's wife would divorce her husband, but she didn't. Somehow, he managed to convince her that he was framed, and she believed him. How stupid of her. They even cut ties with our group and insulted everyone for not standing by them. As for Andrea, She had no place with us anymore, and she cut ties with our social circle too. Everyone was so disappointed when Andrea admitted their affair started 6 months after our wedding, and they had been fooling everyone, including me. Her reputation was ruined too, and she could no longer get favors and support. It's only been 9 months, and I figured putting this here would help me heal faster and relieve my burden. Honestly, that was all that was left of my heart, and I can't guarantee I will fully love any other woman I meet. I have been badly hurt, and it has changed everything about me. OP, you shouldn't let your broken relationship with your wife dictate how the rest of your life will go. It's a good thing you have a support group, and I'm glad they stood by you. Don't let the past steal your future joy, love, and happiness. It might be challenging, but I know you will be able to fully recover from this one day and not let it faze you. Thank you for sharing. Story 4. My wife and I were married for 4.5 years. The first time my wife and I met was at a football stadium. I had gone out with a couple of friends to support my football team, and she was there with her family too. While the game was going on, she tried to take a picture, and since I was sitting a row from where she sat, she captured me in the image. Without caring if I was intruding or not, I smiled as she took the shots. Well, I'll say we became friends afterward because she was so lovely and polite. After she saw me grinning from ear to ear in the pictures, she asked if she could send the pictures to me. It was hilarious because I thought she would be mad that I ruined her moments. Instead, we became friends from there. We exchanged contacts and followed each other on Facebook. After the day we met, we didn't talk for a while. We started talking again after she sent a message on Facebook, and from there, we started talking. It started as random questions, and gradually we moved to personal questions. I liked her personality. She was energetic and always fun to talk on the phone or chat with. So, after weeks of talking and getting to know ourselves, I asked her on a date, and she accepted. Our first date was so smooth, and it even led to other dates, subsequently leading to a relationship. I had fallen in love with her, and she made me feel like a baby again. I was heartbroken in my previous relationship and was too afraid to fall in love again, which was more reason I buried myself in work and tried to shut out any woman that came my way. But with my ex-wife, it was different. She made me feel safe and assured, and I loved her so much. My mind was at rest with her, and eventually, we got married. My wife had always wanted a child, so we had one child in the first year of our marriage. She was already 2 months pregnant before we got married, and although I didn't want a child so fast, I agreed for us to have a child because of how excited she was. When our daughter came, I was so happy. As much as I wasn't fond of babies or children, I loved how she lit up and how her presence pushed me to work harder and become a better father and husband. As my daughter grew older, she spent more time with me because I worked from home and had enough time to take her to her daycare and bring her back home. My wife was a nurse, so the only time she got to spend time with our daughter was either on her days off or when she was at home. Also, because I was the one who spent most of the time at home, I took care of the house, cleaned, did the laundry, and on some days, I would cook. I did this because I wanted to ease the burden on my wife and loved the neat house. I also knew she was always exhausted every time she came home, and the possibility of her cleaning the house, going grocery shopping, and cooking with the little time she had to rest was almost impossible. So, I did all I could to make life easier for us. We continued like this for the first 3 years of our marriage, and we were both happy. We barely had issues except for our normal couple fights, which never lasted a day. We were also great parents to our daughter and did everything possible to raise her well. Everything was great between us until the 4th year of our marriage. It all started with my wife not returning when she was supposed to. For example, if she worked the afternoon shift and was supposed to come home in the evening to be with us, she would not return until the following day. She would claim she was covering up for a sick colleague or she decided to work overtime. In the beginning, I understood her reasons, but it got to a level I could not take it anymore. It was becoming more of a habit than an excuse, and it affected our relationship. Our daughter was beginning to miss her mother, and each time I had to devise a dozen excuses for why her mother did not come home. Also, when all of this started, our intimacy reduced terribly. She no longer allowed me to touch her, and each time I tried, she would either complain about being so tired or say she was not in the mood. These continued for weeks, and it even rolled into months. It got so bad that I became afraid for our marriage, and I signed us up for marriage counseling, but she didn't attend the appointment once. As time passed, our relationship deteriorated, and I had to open up to a close friend. He first suggested that my wife was either seeing someone or was tired of our marriage, and none of that made sense. I trusted my wife so much, and it never crossed my mind that she would cheat on me. To even show how much I trusted her, I argued with my friend that my wife couldn't cheat, and I believed she was only working so hard so we could give our daughter the kind of future she deserved. I also thought about the aspect of my wife being tired of our marriage, and I tried to talk to her about it. But every time I brought it up, her response would either be cold or she would sound so uninterested in the conversation. After trying so many times to make things right, the idea of my wife seeing someone else crossed my mind. Already, in the previous months, there were many changes with her. Before, she used to go grocery shopping wearing simple clothes, but she became more conscious of how she looked. She would even combine 2 to 3 perfumes just to go grocery shopping. I didn't think it was suspicious because I had always complained about how she dressed outside the house. She used to look homeless before, which was a major improvement on her end. It was something I complained about all the time, and I was glad she was finally listening. So, one day, my wife was playing with our daughter in the living room, and I was in the kitchen trying to make dinner for us. I remember her phone ringing, and instead of taking the call in the living room like I expected her to, she rushed out of the house. Immediately, I knew something was wrong. In our 2 years of dating and 4+ years of marriage, my wife had never gone outside to take a call, no matter what the call was about. Out of curiosity, I left what I was doing and followed her. I didn't go out of the house, but I could hear most of her conversation because she left the door open. Before she returned, I hurried back to the kitchen. After she came back inside the house, she acted all cool, played with our daughter for a few minutes, and then turned to me to ask about the groceries we needed to replace. I mentioned the things, and she made the list. After she was done, she told me she'd be going to get them at the grocery store since she wasn't doing anything at the moment. I didn't need a psychic to tell me something was off. Her body language said it all. I watched her go into her room to shower, change, and wear light makeup for grocery shopping. We had not shared our husband and wife bond or even communicated like we used to in months. But there she was, excited and all dressed for grocery shopping. As soon as she left, I asked my closest neighbor if his oldest daughter could help me watch after our daughter for a few minutes, and he agreed. It was such a relief, and without wasting time, I drove to the grocery store. I knew she went to the grocery store. I waited a bit, and just as I was about to step out of my car to confirm if she was genuinely shopping, I saw my wife walking out with a man from the grocery store. She had her hand around his waist, and his hands were crossed over her shoulder. It was already evening, and the whole store was lit up. I actually saw them from the see-through glass, and before they stepped out of the store, I already charged inside. In anger I was boiling, and to date, I could not believe I had acted that way. My wife was so shocked to see me that she did not know what to do or say. I didn't confront or talk to her because deep down, I knew we were done. Instead, I focused on her affair partner, yelled at him, and ensured I caused a scene. People gathered around to take videos and photographs, but I didn't mind. I was just so angry. In the end, his manager found out about his affair with my wife, and he was fired. As for my wife, she came home that night to beg and cry, but no matter what she said, I was too disappointed to forgive her. She said she did it because she thought she would get away with it and return to me, which hurt me even more. That same night, I kicked her out of the house, and she crashed at her friend's place. She had been seeing him for more than 6 months, and I was completely unaware that whole time. She was telling stories of how she covered for her friend at work and blah blah, but she was spending the night with him while I looked after our daughter alone. There's no need to ask if we divorced or not because we did. I could not just forgive her or forget she cheated on me while I was trying to be a good husband and father. Thankfully, I won custody of our daughter, mainly because she was never around in the first place, so it was better she stayed with me. It's been over a year, and I still have not gotten over the pain and hurt I felt. I was so disappointed, and I still am right now. My daughter is my top priority, and I will try my best to be a good father and teach her to be faithful to whoever she ends up with. There are different levels to why women cheat, each with its own shockwave. I'm sorry you had to go through this, but you do not have to sulk forever. She should be soaking because it's her loss and not yours. I'm glad you won custody of your daughter, and I know you will be a great dad. You need to let go of the past and move on, but you must open up your heart first. I understand it can take time to heal, though, so take all the time you need until you are ready again. I wish you all the best. Story 5. I was married to my wife for just a year when I found out about her affair. Before Sarah and I married, we were family friends, and our families knew one another. In fact, her mom was a very close friend of my mom, and somehow their relationship continued with us, their children. As a teenager, I had been crushing on Sarah for a while, but after she married her previous husband, what I had for her died down, and I moved on with my life. Unfortunately, 2 years after she was married, she divorced her husband because of his infidelity, and that's when we became close friends. Throughout the time she was dealing with her divorce, I was there to stand by and support her, and in the process, we fell in love with each other. I asked her to be my girlfriend. According to her, she said I was nothing like her ex-husband, and she wished she had met me before she got married to him. Sincerely, I loved Sarah so much, and shortly after she was done with her divorce, I asked her to move in with me. Being that I had known her for years and wanted us to live together, she did. We didn't date for so long. We dated for 9 months, and after 9 months of waking up next to her every day, I believed it was time to make things official. We had a small wedding, invited friends and family, and everything was great. Marrying Sarah was like a dream come true, and I treated her with so much love. On her end, Sarah cared for me, cleaned the house, and did all the necessary chores. She was so sweet, and I loved coming home from work to be with her. Even after we remarried, we continued with our bi-monthly family gathering, where our parents and available siblings would come together at my parents' or her parents' house, and we would all eat together like a family. Life was great for us, and we barely had any issues except when I forgot to take out the trash. After Sarah divorced her ex-husband, she told me she was no longer in contact with him, especially since they ended things on bad terms, and I believed her. I hadn't seen how much she had been hurt by him, and I knew it was difficult for her to leave someone she had dated for 4 years and was married to for 3 years. That's why I tried as much as possible to comfort her and encourage her during that time. We didn't have a child or thought about having one because Sarah didn't want children. She preferred we either got a dog or a bird whenever she was ready to become a parent, and I was cool with that. I didn't like kids anyways, and I was cool with us owning a pet sometime in the future. Even our parents tried to convince us by telling us all the beautiful things about having kids and why children were important, but we still did not let them get to us. Now that I write this, I'm grateful I didn't let my parents convince me because I'd probably be raising another man's child. So, it all happened that one day, Sarah and I were in the living room watching a movie together on a Friday night, like we always did. Then I realized I could not find my phone, not like it was missing, but I had this bad habit of dropping my phone in a place I would forget. At first, I searched the couch and the whole living room, but I could not find it. She didn't bother helping me find it because it wasn't the first or second time it was happening that week. The worst part was that I loved to leave my phone on silent, so even if I called the number, I'd need to go from room to kitchen to bathroom to hear the vibration. After searching for a couple of minutes, and I was already frustrated, I asked for Sarah's phone so I could go around the house and listen for the vibration, and she gave it to me. It was a big distraction from the movie we were watching, and since it was a series we were anticipating, she was so engrossed that she didn't even notice when I left. I checked the kitchen, the laundry room, I did laundry just before we watched the movie, the bedroom, and eventually, I found my phone in the bathroom. I had left it there after I used the toilet. I was a bit relieved because I had a work meeting in less than 10 minutes. Just as I was about to leave our bedroom, a WhatsApp group chat notification popped up on her screen. There was something weird with the group chat name and all the sensual emojis attached to it. Out of curiosity, I opened the group chat to read the message, and at first glance, I knew what was going on. I was wondering what my wife was doing in a group like that. It wasn't until I read the messages that I realized my wife had secretly been having an affair behind my back. The most heartbreaking part was that she was cheating on me with her ex-husband and his girlfriend. They said all sorts of nasty things to one another in the group, and from all I gathered, they had been having threesomes. They even had one that week, and they were already making plans for the next and all the toys they wanted to use to spice things up. Honestly, I stood in shock for almost a minute, trying to wrap my head around what I had just seen. It was shocking to think that we both talked about her ex-husband that same day, and she cussed at him and wished him all the miserable things in the world. I knew I would have to read their messages over and over to be sure I wasn't making things up in my head. So I took screenshots of the messages I saw, took screenshots of her ex-husband and his lover's picture in case she tried to deny it, and I sent them to my number in WhatsApp. Then I marked her message as unread, and I cleared every trace. I could not even confront her because it was a lot to take in that night, and I couldn't sleep the whole night. My head nearly popped open. The following morning, she noticed I was a bit dull and cold toward her, but she believed I would cheer up once we met our family. We were gathering at her parents' house on the second Saturday of the month. When we got to her parents' house, I tried not to ruin the happy moment and waited until it was time for lunch. While we were eating, I asked her if she had seen her ex-husband recently. The question surprised everyone. She answered with a smile and denied not seeing him since their divorce. My hands were already shaking at that point, and her parents noticed it. I couldn't control my anger anymore and yelled at her to explain the screenshots I saw on her phone. When she got my phone and read the messages, her mouth dropped and she began to cry immediately. At the same time, I sent all the screenshots to our joint family group chat, and everyone was shocked. I wasn't the only one who was so disappointed. Her parents were so ashamed and disappointed that they yelled at her to explain what I was talking about, and she did nothing but cry. After I exposed her in front of her parents and my parents, I walked out of the house, and she tried to follow me. I left her there, and she did not return home that evening. The following day, I packed all of her stuff and drove it to her parents' house, and I left. She arrived at my house the following week and begged me to forgive her. She even created a small scene as I entered my car and drove out, and I didn't care. Eventually, we divorced, and she has been miserable since then. Also, her infidelity affected the relationship between her family somehow, and my mom is no longer close to her mother like they used to be. It's been 4 years, and I'm glad I didn't let her infidelity hold me back. I'm currently in a relationship with the woman I intend to marry, but we are taking things slow. As for Sarah, she found out her ex-husband was only using her for pleasure, and he didn't even marry his girlfriend. He dumped them both, and since then, she has not been in any relationship. OP, women can be so deceptive at times. To even think she made you think she hated her ex-husband when she was cheating on you. Be glad you learned the truth early, and I'm so happy you have found a better woman who will love and cherish you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Take care.